Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a preview of our insider subscriber feature, Riccardo Muti's 10 best recordings, the non-operatic ones. That is, orchestral music or orchestral music with a choir, but not operas, because he did both, and he did both extremely well. Now, in considering Muti, who has just turned 80, I believe, I think we should be considering what's going to happen when he and his fellow dinosaurs are no longer with us, because they are all going extinct. And what have we got? What are orchestras going to do? What are the major orchestras going to do? They've actually ruined the pool of new conductors by creating this crazy system that I've talked about so many times, where conductors spend maybe 16, 18 weeks with an orchestra, and then they go jetting around the globe, doing all the same music with all these other orchestras, or where they hold multiple music directorships across the world, which doesn't give them time to do anything sensible with any of those orchestras. I mean, the case in point is Andris Nelson's. You know, he's doing Beethoven in Vienna, he's doing Bruckner in Leipzig, he's doing Shostakovich in Boston. He runs around doing everything all at once. And what do we get? We get mediocre interpretation. We also get superior playing, because the orchestras now are essentially self-sustaining. They consist of marvelous players who have their own problems. Don't get me wrong. You know, orchestras have a major role in this, because orchestral musicians also bop around like conductors do, looking for new jobs or higher paying jobs or moving from one place to another. What we need, if we want classical music to have the personality and interest that it did when the great conductors were out there, when the Zells and the Reiners and the Toscaninis and the Furtwänglers, and we need conductors who will spend decades, ideally, with one orchestra and seldom make guest appearances. Occasionally, they can make forays, but who will spend the majority of the season with their own ensemble. And you need ensembles which are willing to be ensembles, which are willing to stock themselves with players committed to the community, committed to the orchestra, committed to a vision of collective sonority, which everybody shares. That's what we had, and we don't anymore. And Muti is sort of emblematic of what happened, because Muti was not a galloping, one-shot wonder sort of guy, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, see you later, sort of one-night stander. He spent a considerable time with the Philharmonia, a considerable time in Philadelphia. He had that dedication initially, and since then, of course, he was torn between doing concert music and operatic stuff. And of course, the operatic world is nuts, so you could be running the Vienna State Opera or whatever, and you're only going to last for a couple of years, because the politics is unbearable, so you're going to be jumping around that way. He made records with all different orchestras, with Berlin, even though he wasn't there, with Vienna, and and then he was at La Scala for a long time. And I don't know, he may still be there for all I know. I have no clue. He began to do the shuffle, the conductor shuffle. And they shuffle on from one place to another. Now he's in Chicago for 15 minutes. They plan on keeping him there. Orchestras today want name conductors, but they don't want permanent conductors. They don't want the kind who are going to really make the orchestra have a vision. One of you mentioned, actually, and you're absolutely right, that one of the exceptions to the rule has been Ivan Fischer with the Budapest Festival Orchestra. That's an orchestra molded in his image, and it's fabulous. And whether you like it or you don't like it, it has personality, it has a distinctive sound, it is a unique musical organism. And thinking back on Muti's career, I can't think of a single unique musical organism that he has created. I mean, obviously, when Ormandy hired him to take over in Philly, Ormandy chose him because he wasn't Ormandy, because he was going to do something very different. And he did do things very differently, and he did repertoire that Ormandy would not have done as well. I mean, he did that amazing Rite of Spring, and then there were the full-length Stravinsky ballets and an incredible Firebrand suite, and it's just really some really hot stuff, some of which we will be talking about in his best recordings. And you believe me, we're going to cover him. But the fact of the matter is, he didn't have a characteristic sound, and he wasn't there long enough to keep one, to really say, okay, this is me, this is my sound. And, he did things like a Beethoven cycle, then he jumped ship to Phillips, and he redid a Brahms stuff, and it was all just so-so. I mean, that great first flush was what really, really made him so exciting with Philadelphia. And he had been tremendously exciting with the Philharmonia, or the New Philharmonia, or whatever it was called by the time he left it. That was where he did some of his very, very best work. And he was always a thrilling operatic conductor. So like so many conductors today, they get stretched too thin, and they don't focus. They just don't focus. What is Muti's core repertoire? What does he do that's better than anyone else? To his credit, he has found some things. He really has. He's been passionately devoted to Italian music of the early 19th century, including Cherubini and Spontini, and he's done these operas at La Scala. In the operatic world, he's been very imaginative. He's been very creative in finding interesting repertoire, worthy repertoire, that he could lavish his attention on. But in the orchestral field, not so much. Not so much at all. And it's a pity, because he has the talent. He had the talent to do it. He just didn't do it. And I have to say, I have to bring up something that just blows my mind. This was so bizarre. Just a few, a couple days ago or so, a day ago, I got the most strange comment for me from somebody who said, I would never think to find racism on your channel, but you, sir, are a racist because of what you said about Italian conductors, and so I am unsubscribing. And I thought, what did I say about Italian conductors that was racist? Well, I figured it out eventually. What I said was that conductors like Toscanini and Muti and Abbado, as they got older, they got more rigid. They got stiffer. They had fire. They were exciting, and they didn't get slower necessarily. They got stiffer, and that seems to be a thing that happened with a bunch of Italian conductors. Whether it's uniquely Italian, I don't know, but it's happened with Italian conductors. That was my horrifying racist comment. And I found it astonishing. I can't wait till my brother-in-law, who is Italian and who lives in Milano, sees this video, which he will, because he watches that with my sister, who lives in Milan. And my family is like Italian, and half of it anyway. And it's just astonishing, the things that people come up with and the way that they take personal offense at sort of generic artistic commentary like that. But I do want to stress that I never knew that actually that Italians were a race. I always thought they were Caucasians for the most part. Anyway, the whole thing was just crazy. But I thought it was ironic, because here I am talking about Muti and what's happened to him. And he is a dinosaur. Like all of the conductors his age, not just the Italian ones, he's a dinosaur. And soon he will no longer be with us. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen anytime soon. But listening to his latest crop of recordings, he's basically run out of ideas. He did a great Shostakovich 13th, I'll give him that. But so much of the stuff he's done has just been remakes. I mean, remakes of remakes of remakes. If he did it well 20 years ago, he does it well a little bit less well now. And that's what we're getting from these people, because they're not interested in doing anything new. And if I had my way, in an ideal world, ideally, what I would do is I would say to the major orchestras, which of course would never even dream of such a thing because they have to have big names, I would say, let all these people, wind up their careers and go to their heavenly reward. And once they're gone, start over again completely. Hire younger conductors on limited contracts for limited terms and see if the orchestra likes them. And if the orchestra does like them, then get them to commit to staying with the orchestra for an indefinite period. I mean, if they wind up hating each other, okay, fine, you can negotiate your departure, but limit what they do outside. Make them focus on your ensemble. And I would say the same thing to the orchestral players. And then that way we could create a few, I mean, there would never be that many, but a few seriously interesting conductors with distinctive conceptions of orchestral sonority. But before that happens, before they take that regular position, they have to have a certain fund of experience. I was thinking also of Klaus Makala, whose Sibelius cycle sucks terribly, and people got hysterical when I said so. It was a real emperor's new clothes moment, I thought, in reading the comments and the criticism. Everybody wants to hire this guy as a permanent conductor. He's in his 20s. That's absurd. You should never hire a conductor who knows less than the players. I think that's asking for trouble. I really, really do. He's got to be able to teach them something, and he's got to have his own artistic personality fully formed in order to do that. So sure, let him have a couple of positions. Let him have a position with one orchestra, then another orchestra. Now he's with 200 orchestras. Everybody wants him. He's the flavor of the month. He's young and he's cute, and that's what, the music is beside the point. And so I really think there are ways that could create the conditions to have spectacular conductors. And, Muti's career, he's a fantastic conductor. Let's be clear. He's excellent. He's made many, many great records. If he has any real defect at this point in his career, it's, like I said, it's a certain stiffness, that a lack of fire, where he used to be such a firebrand, number one. And number two, he doesn't really care what his records sound like as a recording artist. It was very interesting, because remember the big Muti box came out, and I covered it. You can look at the video. And his recordings, compared to the Andre Previn box, which came out roughly at the same time. The Previn recordings with the LSO sounded so much better than Muti's did. And it was the same label, probably the same engineers half the time, but he didn't seem to care. When he got to Philadelphia, Philadelphia always had issues finding a good recording venue, and he didn't really help. He didn't help them. So, he could have insisted. He really could have. He could have said, wait a minute, this doesn't sound good. Let's find another venue. Let's do something. I don't think he's ever really been that concerned about it, which is a pity, because it doesn't really do him justice. It doesn't mean his records all sound bad, but they're highly variable, much more so than some of his colleagues. And that's another issue that we'll be considering when we look at his 10 best recordings on ClassicsToday.com. So if you are not a Classics Today subscriber, do please consider signing up. The link is below this particular video, but also give some thought to what we're going to do with the next generation of conductors, because quite frankly, I just see a vast swath of anonymity. I really do. I don't know. Honeck has some personality. Maybe it's getting a little strange, but he's got personality. Karensis is an egomaniacal whack job. We've got to find people who love music, who have ideas about music, who can project music to an audience, and who can do it in a way that allows us to get to know them. Not that they're going to do something grotesque immediately, so we know them from, the Dadaist mustache that they paint on the classical Mona Lisa. No, people who show us the potential of what the music can be. And they're out there. I think Muti was definitely one of them, but I don't think his career evolved in a way that allowed him to really express his truest self. And that's a shame. I think it's a shame, because however many wonderful records he's made, and he's made a lot of them, I think there was more there. I think there was more than we've actually had an opportunity to hear. And I'm not sure he's even aware of the issue. I don't know. I don't know the man, and I don't know what his thoughts are. But I do know that he had the gift. And in many of his best recordings, he reveals the gift. But I don't think that because of the whole circumstance and the way this business works now, I don't think his career evolved in a way which was necessarily the most propitious for the expression of his gift. And that's my opinion about it. But go have a look at classicstoday.com, see what the 10 best are, see if you agree with me, and we'll take it from there. Keep on listening, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.